Does it mean that it's more difficult to influence a person if he keeps his thoughts in purity?
Yes, absolutely. When faced with various religions, it is very difficult to influence Muslims. They are in a constant connection with the egregore. They do namaz every day and read prayers on a daily basis. They are constantly under some kind of a dome, so it is very difficult to influence them. When you start impacting a person, he begins to address in a prayer. Indeed, many of them are very different from those who come to church only when everything is bad in their life. They come to pray and then for 5 years they forget about God, some canons, and so on. Muslims, as a rule, passionately believe and passionately give energy to their egregore. And this egregore protects them very well. That's why it is very difficult to work to make any kind of influence on a true Muslim believer.
Is this some kind of a good egregore?
Well, for them, yes. This egregore is good for adepts who contribute good energy to it.
How do you sense it? For instance, you have found an energy trace of such person. What's next? Do you try to drag him somehow to visualize this thread and you fail? Or how do you do that?
It disappears. I cannot get a grip on it. I focus on it, but something immediately knocks me out of the flow, just like that. Or I visualize a person in front of me clearly and can affect him even at a mental level, but some image is not created in my mind at all. I even look at a photo, reproduce an image, but it vanishes from my mind. Thus, I can clearly see that a person is covered with something.
Does this only work with Muslims?
It does for me. Nowadays, there are very few people among Christians who truly believe. Even those who write in their comments that God is in the soul, that they are all faithful believers, but in reality they are not. Even most often they write that all this is a sin, but then ask in a private message how to make a rubbing spell. Such cases also happen.
A rubbing spell?
A rubbing spell.
What is it?
It means pulling off luck or some benefits, beauty, money, success. In other words, pulling off something good from another person. There is shifting when we dump some crap on someone else, and there is pulling when we take something good from another person.
Jana, could you please tell us if there are people to whom you cannot connect or influence them by various magic methods in any way?
There are such people. If there is ritual protection on a person, it's not even possible to connect through cards. If someone has put ritual protection over him, or if an entity is in a person's service, it is also difficult to do that. It happens that a person has a strong ancestral protection. He has a powerful, prosperous, rich kin from generation to generation, and even looking at the cards, you cannot read information from him. He is covered as impenetrable. It happens.
You touched upon an interesting point that when a person experiences strong emotion, he opens up to the invisible world. But what if a person diligently works on himself, controls himself, and doesn't even allow any of the low qualities to manifest? Does it mean that he belongs to a category of people to whom it's impossible to do anything by means of magic rituals?
Nothing is impossible. There are difficulties. There are points that you've mentioned where it would be difficult to work with such a person. It would take a lot of manipulation to break his will. This is energy consuming, and not every practitioner will be breaking through that door for so long. Someone will just say, hell with it, he doesn't give in. There are such cases.
Is it possible that he will never give in? Did you have such cases in your practice?
I had once. There was a man who didn't give in at all. He felt a strong impact but didn't give in.
Were you personally acquainted with him, or did you get his photo roughly speaking?
No, how to say, it was an order, but I met this person once. That man was an athlete, very hard-tempered, and he had self-control, a really tough one. Athletes and military men may have such a temper. His willpower was at such a level that it was very difficult to work with him, even through evil spirits. In the end, I refused.
Self-control at the level of emotions, right?
Yes, discipline, self-control. The man controlled and distinguished his thoughts from alien ones. Hazes had no effect on him. He was fully aware. Such people are very difficult to work with. There are such people indeed.
What do you mean by the word awareness?
When a person understands that something is wrong with him, that he goes against his principles, let's say he will never cheat on his wife, he has the principle that if there is one, then it's forever. I attach an entity that pushes him. You should cheat. You should sleep with that female client. And his principles definitely take over. That's what awareness is about. A person doesn't succumb to any provocations that are imposed on him and intended to break his will.
But if someone is already attached to him, can these principles not be of his own?
That's exactly where awareness comes in. You realize, how come these principles not be mine my whole life?
You mean, who am I, right?
Right. I lived my whole life with this. Where do these thoughts come from? When a person begins to turn on such a protective element, he immediately weakens the effect of an entity or a haze.
A protective element is a search for oneself, isn't it?
Yes, it means to be on. You know, it's like hypnosis. When they begin to put us into hypnosis, but we catch this moment and start reciting a poem in our mind, for example, we thus immediately interrupt the state of induced hypnosis. The same is true when working with magic. When a person begins to realize that something is wrong with him, delve into himself, try to control his emotions and follow his principles. It is very difficult to work with him.
Jana, during our conversation, you repeatedly mentioned connection with some forces. If it's not a secret, what was your contract about? I mean, what do you pay with for possessing this power?
This mustn't be disclosed. What I paid off to this force is forbidden to talk about. But I can say that a person who concluded a contract, if we are speaking of dark forces, and who knows what he will pay with, by calling this force, he does crab through it and brings necessary energy into this egregore. I mean, it's also an egregore, only it feeds on a different energy. The more crap I do, the more people I involve. You know, it's like bring a friend and you'll get a bonus. It works in this case. The more people renounce the cross because of me and turn away from the church, the more energy I bring into that egregore, the more it will give me. But in the end, yes, I will pay something. Yet while doing these evil deeds, I take money from people. They eventually leave with a result. I have their money, and this egregore gets a portion of crap from me, which I have done to somebody. That's the chain.
Did you know that at the time of concluding the contract?
Not exactly.
But you stipulated in advance what would you pay with, didn't you?
Well, let's say I was deceived. That is why I'll repeat again, when people unknowingly get into it, it always ends badly.
And there is nothing you can do about that?
Not anymore. I've already paid.
So all the conditions have been fulfilled.
I've paid in full, so to say. That's the only reason I left this egregore, because I lost everything, the most precious I had. Payment due came at the moment when I began to renounce it. Since you quit, go ahead and pay.
Is it actually scary to live?
To live? Well, how to put it? It depends on what you're afraid of.
So much around.
Speaking about practice, I can say that when I buried my entire family, life became much easier. In the sense that there is nothing I can be afraid of losing. As a rule, people are afraid to live if they are not completely selfish. They are worried about their relatives and friends. They are afraid of losing what is most precious. That is probably the fear of a normal person who really loves someone and feels something. When you have nothing to lose, this fear disappears and you already realize that you are alone, one-on-one with yourself, and in fact, you've already passed the threshold of fear, which could be worst for you. To a certain extent, the absence of fear gives you strength. You stop being afraid of living, dying, and so on.
Jana, what advice would you give to our viewers who might be afraid of some impact of the invisible world? Well, and just to people who would like to live happily in well-being and in peace of mind and so on.
I wish such people not to break the balance. If you want others to do you good, don't do crap to others either. Because as a rule, there is no boomerang, there is balance. Think positively, because often people start telling themselves, I cannot do that, I won't make it, this is my destiny. No, you should think positively, you should attract good things into your life with your intention. Raise your vibrations, go in for sports, spend more time in nature, energize your life in every way. Don't live like in a Groundhog Day. You come home from work, eat, hang out somewhere on the weekend, and go back to work. You should develop, read, educate yourself, develop spiritually, maintain your physical shape, all this together. I can advise people to just take care of themselves, of their life, and bring only the best into it.
Jana, thank you so much for coming to our studio. It's been a big pleasure talking to you.
For me, it's also a great pleasure visiting you. I hope I answered some of the questions. Thank you.
Благодарю вас.
Dear friends, if you have any questions, please send them to our email. You will find it in the description below. This was Shadow